Am I the a-hole for refusing to take my cheating wife back at our daughter's wedding? A story of betrayal and regret. Hey Reddit. It happened when my ex-wife, the woman who shattered our family with her betrayal, decided that this was the perfect occasion to ask for forgiveness. As I stood there, surrounded by guests, family, and the woman who had destroyed my trust, I realized that no amount of time could erase the pain she had caused. And yet, she expected me to simply forget it all. It all started 6 years ago when my seemingly perfect marriage collapsed in the ugliest way possible. My wife and I had been together for over 2 decades, raising our beautiful daughter, Emily, in what I thought was a happy, stable home. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but nothing could have prepared me for the day I discovered her affair. She had been seeing someone behind my back for nearly a year, a younger man, a co-worker she had met through her job. I found out through sheer accident, stumbling upon flirtatious messages on her phone that left no room for doubt. The emotional devastation hit me like a freight train, and when I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she gave me the usual excuses. She felt neglected, she was unhappy, she made a mistake. As if any of that justified the absolute destruction of the life we had built together. Divorce was the only option for me. There was no coming back from what she did. I refused to live with someone who could betray me so completely and then expect me to understand. Emily was in college at the time, and while the divorce was painful for her, she eventually came to terms with it. My ex-wife tried to fight for reconciliation at first, but when I made it clear that there was no second chance, she moved on. Or so I thought. Fast forward to Emily's wedding day. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, a moment where I could celebrate my daughter's future without any of the ghosts from my past haunting me. But I underestimated my ex-wife's audacity. From the moment she arrived at the venue, she seemed different. She was overly friendly, trying to act as though we were still close, as if the past 6 years had never happened. I did my best to remain civil, for Emily's sake, but I made it clear through my body language that I wanted nothing to do with her beyond the basic pleasantries required for the occasion. Then came the reception. As Emily and her new husband shared their first dance, I took a moment to step outside for some fresh air. That's when my ex-wife followed me. At first, she made small talk, commenting on how beautiful our daughter looked and how proud we should be. I nodded, keeping my responses short, hoping she would get the hint. But then she dropped the bombshell. She told me she had never stopped loving me. That she regretted everything, that she had been selfish and stupid, and that losing me was the worst mistake of her life. And then, in front of the night sky and the faint sound of wedding music, she asked me if we could give us another chance. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. How convenient for her to feel this way now, after 6 years. I reminded her of the pain she had caused, of how she had chosen to betray me, of how she had torn our family apart with her selfishness. She had moved on and lived her life, but I had spent years rebuilding mine from the wreckage she left behind. I told her I wasn't the same man she had once known. I had found peace in my solitude, in knowing that I had cut out the person who hurt me the most. There was nothing left between us, and there never would be again. She started crying, telling me she had changed, that she had been in therapy, that she had realized how deeply she had wounded me. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but all I felt was anger. How dare she try to use our daughter's wedding as a stage for her redemption? This day wasn't about her or me. It was about Emily and the future she was building. And yet, my ex-wife had the nerve to make it about her regrets. I told her no. A firm, unwavering no. And that should have been the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. She wasn't ready to accept rejection, not in front of all these people, not when she had convinced herself that this was her grand moment of reconciliation. She started raising her voice, telling me I was being cruel, that I was holding on to a grudge, that life was too short for bitterness. I kept my composure, but my patience was wearing thin. And then Emily walked outside, looking confused and concerned. She had heard the commotion and came to check on us. My ex-wife, still crying, turned to her and said, "I'm just trying to fix our family. I want us to be a family again. Please, talk to your father. Tell him we deserve another chance." That was when I saw red. She was dragging Emily into this, using her as an emotional pawn. I turned to my daughter, taking a deep breath before speaking. "Emily, I love you more than anything, and I will always be there for you. But your mother and I? That's never going to happen. She made her choice 6 years ago, and I made mine. I refuse to undo all the healing I've done just to make her feel better about herself." Emily looked at me, then at her mother, and I could see the tension in her face. She loved us both, but she wasn't a child anymore. She understood what had happened between us, and she wasn't about to force a reunion that I clearly didn't want. She simply nodded and said, "I just want today to be a happy day. That's all." I agreed. And then I walked away, leaving my ex-wife standing there in the night, sobbing into her hands. But I knew this wasn't over. Because after the wedding, I started getting messages from family members. Some took my side, understanding that my ex-wife had crossed a line. Others, However, accused me of being too harsh, of letting my pride get in the way of a second chance. Even Emily later texted me, asking if we could talk about what happened, hinting that maybe I should consider hearing her mother out. And now, I can't help but wonder. Was I too cold? Was I wrong for refusing to let her back in? Or was I simply protecting myself from the woman who once destroyed me? Update. I didn't expect the aftermath of the wedding to be as chaotic as it was. I thought I had closed the door firmly on my ex-wife and made my stance clear, but I underestimated just how determined some people in my life were to change my mind. The wedding had barely ended when the messages started rolling in. At first, they were subtle. A few relatives sending casual texts, asking how I was doing, checking in like they were just making small talk. But I could read between the lines. They weren't just concerned about me. They were feeling me out, trying to gauge whether I was standing firm or if there was any chance I'd reconsider. Then the direct messages started. My ex-wife's sister reached out first, telling me that my ex had been crying nonstop since the wedding, that she truly regretted everything and that she had been holding on to the hope that one day, I'd find it in my heart to forgive her. She went on and on about how time heals all wounds, how life is too short to hold grudges, how it was clear that my ex still loved me. I ignored her message. Then came a call from my former mother-in-law. I debated whether or not to pick up, but curiosity got the best of me. She didn't even waste time on pleasantries. She went straight into a lecture about how I was being stubborn, how her daughter had learned from her mistakes, and how I was punishing her for something she had done years ago. She even tried guilt-tripping me, saying that a broken marriage was one thing, but a broken family was another, and that I owed it to Emily to at least try to make things work. That was when I lost my patience. I told her in no uncertain terms that my marriage had ended the moment her daughter betrayed me. That I didn't owe my ex anything. That this wasn't about a grudge. It was about self-respect. I made it clear that I had moved on from my ex emotionally, but that didn't mean I had to invite her back into my life. Before she could say anything else, I hung up. Then came the biggest blow. Emily reached out. I had expected her to be the only one to truly understand where I was coming from, but even she seemed hesitant. She wasn't pressuring me, at least not directly, but she did ask if we could meet up and talk about everything. When we finally sat down for coffee a few days later, she looked nervous, like she was about to step into dangerous territory. She started by saying she loved me and that she would always respect my choices, but she wanted to know if there was even the slightest chance that I could let go of the past and at least have a civil relationship with her mother. I could see in her eyes that this wasn't just about me and my ex-wife. This was about her. She wanted to believe that her family wasn't completely fractured, that there was a chance for some kind of reconciliation. I told her I would always be civil when it came to family events, just as I had been at her wedding, but I would never be with her mother again. I asked her if she truly wanted me to force myself into something that would make me miserable just to satisfy other people's hopes. She hesitated, then shook her head. No, Dad, I don't. I don't know. It's hard. I miss how things used to be. That was the moment I realized just how deeply my ex's actions had affected Emily. She had been strong for years, but now, with her own new marriage, she was facing a different kind of reality, one where her parents were permanently apart. I wanted to reassure her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but I knew better than to make promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I simply said, I love you. I'll always be here for you. But you have to accept that your mother and I are done. She nodded, but I could tell it wasn't the answer she had hoped for. Another update. I thought things would die down after that conversation, but I was wrong. My ex-wife wasn't done trying. A week later, she showed up at my house unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there, looking more nervous than I had ever seen her. She asked if we could talk, and against my better judgment, I let her in. She wasted no time before launching into her speech. She told me she knew she had been selfish, that she had been too late in realizing what she had lost. She admitted that she had dated other people after our divorce, but none of them made her feel the way I had. She claimed that for the past 2 years, she had been working on herself, going to therapy, trying to become a better person. And that through it all, she kept coming back to one conclusion, that she had made the biggest mistake of her life by betraying me, and that she would spend the rest of her life making it up to me if I would just give her the chance. I listened in silence, letting her pour her heart out. But when she was done, I told her the same thing I had told her at the wedding. No. She looked at me, her face filled with pain, as if she genuinely hadn't expected me to reject her again. She asked me why I was so determined to throw away what we had, why I couldn't see that people change, that love could be rebuilt. That was when I snapped. I told her that what we had wasn't thrown away by me. She was the one who had destroyed it. She was the one who had chosen another man over her husband. She was the one who had shattered the trust that had taken decades to build. I told her that her regret didn't change the past, and it didn't erase the pain she had caused. She sat there in silence for a moment before breaking down in tears. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. She had cried years ago when she realized the consequences of her actions, and now, She was crying again because she wasn't getting what she wanted. She left without another word, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. Final update. After that last encounter, I thought I had finally put an end to the situation. I was wrong. My ex-wife didn't contact me again, but others did. Family members who had once been neutral started taking sides. Some of them accused me of being heartless, of refusing to give love another chance. Others supported me, telling me I had every right to keep my distance. The pressure was exhausting, but I stood my ground. Emily, to her credit, never pushed me again. I think she realized that no matter how much she wanted a fairy tale ending, it wasn't going to happen. Our relationship remained strong, but there was an unspoken sadness between us, a mutual understanding that some wounds never truly heal. Months passed, and eventually, the noise died down. My ex-wife stopped trying to reach out, and the rest of the family moved on. I focused on my own life, my own happiness. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. In the end, I learned an important lesson: some doors are meant to stay closed. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. And some people only realize your worth when it's far too late.